Hey everyone, welcome to Cash Out, the weekly TV show where I talk about what happened in the stock market last week and what might happen next week. It's now also available via podcast, so if you're listening on the podcast, thanks. This week, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. Still about the stock market, but I happen to live in Washington, D.C., and I don't know if you were paying attention, but Wednesday in D.C. got a little out of control. And I know a lot of people on my TikTok page like to say, hey, keep politics out of this. We don't want to hear your political opinions. We just want you to talk about the stock market. Here's the problem with that. Stock market and politics go hand in hand. It's almost impossible sometimes between elections or political policies going into effect or votes on political policies or tweets to not affect the markets. And when these things happen, people want to know. So it's inevitable that eventually we're going to talk about politics, and today might be one of those days, or will be one of those days. Now, the way Cash Out usually goes is I talk about what happened last week, I talk about what might happen next week, and then at the end of the show, I go over some of your TikTok questions in more depth. You know, you can only do 60-second videos on TikTok, so sometimes I can't get to everything the way I'd like to. This week, though, didn't really have any questions from TikTok that I couldn't answer on TikTok, so I'm going to keep this episode a little bit short, and we'll just focus on what happened last week here in Washington, D.C., and what might happen next week as well as next year or the next couple of years, because as a lot of people have been saying, genie's out of the bottle, and you can't really put the genie back in now. It's out, and I don't know if genie is such a good word, whereas maybe domestic terrorist might be a better word. But once it's out, it doesn't go back in. So here's what I'm talking about. We have these crises every couple years. Every couple years, there's a big crisis that happens that shakes not only the country, but the economy and maybe the stock market and maybe the world to its core. You know, going back to 2001, we had September 11th. Stock market was halted. There were no trades, no investments. Wall Street was closed, I think for a week, but it might have been 2. This is one of those examples when you're sitting there watching in real time going, oh my God, the world is ending. And they delayed it, one, because Ground Zero, the World Trade Center, was in the financial district. So, you know, when the financial district, the hub of the global investing world, is kind of hit by terrorists, there's not going to be any trading going on because it's basically a war zone down there. But the other reason that it was halted for so long was because we were in a state of panic. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know what was going to happen next. We didn't know what was going to happen a day from now, let alone weeks or months or years. And Wall Street was doing its best to control the panic. Didn't really work because the day they reopened the markets plummeted, they crashed. This sounds like a trash shit thing to say, but these in the moment, end of the world catastrophes are buying opportunities. Markets recover, and it happens time and again throughout history. People get scared, they think it's the end of the world, they pull out all of their money, they hold cash because they don't know what's going to happen, they don't know if they're going to have to flee the country. You know, I mean, it's all kinds of scenarios. Nowadays with COVID, people are pulling out money from the markets. Most people aren't even invested, right? I think it's like 45% of Americans are invested in the stock market, or 55% are invested, and the other little bit less than half are not. But the people who do have some investments, they pull out when these kinds of events happen, like COVID, like the Iraq war, like September 11th, like the housing crisis, like the banking crisis in 2008. When these things happen, people pull out their money. And you know that Warren Buffett quote, because talk about it all the time. When others are greedy, be fearful. When others are fearful, be greedy. And it sounds like a terrible thing to say, but these are buying opportunities. Because in the moment we think the world is ending, but it almost never does, right? Like these issues can drag on. They can last months or weeks or years, but things recover and markets recover as well. What happened on Wednesday seems a little different though. And I know I'm saying that in the moment, and I'm sure in 2001 I would be saying September 11th feels a little different as well. When I was watching this whole thing unfold, I was at the gym and I'm looking up at the TVs at my gym and they were just protesting. They were sitting on on the lawn of the Capitol and they were chanting and they had their flags and whatever. And I thought, on my car ride home from the gym, I thought, I'm going to drive down there and I'm just going to take some pictures because it's a sight to see, I guess. And by the time I left the gym, it takes me about 5 minutes to walk from my gym to my car where I parked on the street. By the time I got in my car and started driving home, my phone started blowing up. Text message after text message after text message from friends who live all over the country saying, are you okay? You need to get indoors. You need to be safe. And I'm like, what happened? Like, what happened in the few minutes from when I left the gym to I'm driving home? Like, I was going to go drive down there and all of a sudden they're saying stay indoors. Something must have happened. So I decided against it, got home, came upstairs and saw what had happened. And I was like, uh-oh, and thought, boy, there goes the stock market. And sure enough, the stock market was pulling back. But I don't think in the moment we knew exactly how out of control it was, because I think if we had, the markets might have sold off way more. And I thought, boy, Thursday is going to be rough for the markets, because this looks like one of those things where it's a slippery slope from bad to worse, can happen way, way quick. And so I thought, boy, we're going to wake up for a doozy on Thursday. And we didn't. Markets were fine. In fact, I made a couple trades and made a little bit of money. And I kind of was like, okay, this was not affecting the markets the way I thought it was, which was odd to me, because I was for sure that we were going to see a big sell-off. And it occurred to me that a lot of the trades today are computer-based. And computers don't know what's going on. They're not watching the news going, uh-oh. They just have their algorithms and their scanners and their screeners and their indicators set up. If the stock drops by this percentage, or if a stock gets to that price or crosses this line or that thing, buy it. That's all these computers and algorithmic trading-based things know. They don't have a conscience. They don't know what's going on. They're not scared. And so markets maybe sold off a little and then they went back up because there's no emotion in it. However, there is emotion behind the computers in the form of a person who is funding these operations, right? Someone, a human, is telling the program to spend this much money and buy this many shares. And when that person gets scared, they will stop trading, right? They'll have the computer trade less, or they'll withdraw the funds immediately. And it's hard to know in this day and age right now, with the markets as volatile as they are, the news that's coming out. Every day a story comes out and a few days later it's old news. It's hard to say whether something bad that happens is just a hot story for the day, or is going to be look at March. March, COVID hits, and the market goes from 28,000, the Dow Jones goes from 28,000 all the way to 18,000 in no time at all. And I'm sitting there with my last big recession experience being 2008, saying, we're just getting started. In fact, if you go back and you look at some of my old TikTok videos, all I say is, we're just getting started. This is only the beginning. It's going to get so much worse, because that's what I kind of expected to happen. I thought it was going to get so much worse. And it didn't, right? It had this very sharp sell-off and then a very sharp recovery. And I was confused. And I think it was mostly tech-based. I think it was mostly the algorithms who sold off, and then the humans sold off, and then more people sold off, and then everyone was like, wow, stock market got cut in half in almost a day or whatever, a couple weeks, a couple days. Let's go flood it back in and make a bunch of money. And then, it just never really sold off the way that I thought it would, which was interesting to me. Coming from 2008 with the recession, if you look at a stock like Apple was $10 a share in 2003. In 2008, right before the recession, Apple was around $225 a share. Recession hits and Apple just starts dropping. As an investor looking for an opportunity, first of all, you have people who are frightened. We've got this housing crisis, the banking crisis, this war with Iraq is still going on, and Afghanistan, and we're in the Middle East. And we've got all these three things at once going on. And it was bad. And Apple started to sell off. Now, if you're looking as an investor going, I'm going to get in here. Where? Where are you getting in? What's the bottom to you? There is no bottom because nobody knows. And with these very overpriced, very expensive stocks, right? Stocks that are in the $300, $400, $500 a share range, they've got a lot of room to the downside, right? You've got a lot of room to the downside. And when you have very wealthy investors who are buying up large shares of these stocks, not just personal private investors, but also hedge funds, mutual funds, retirement, all kinds of different things. When everyone starts getting scared and everyone starts thinking, uh-oh, this could be one of those end of the world, hoard your cash kind of moments, get out of stocks, markets are crashing. What's the bottom? You don't know. You're looking at Apple at 225 and, a little bit later it's 180 and you're thinking, wow, it was 225, now it's 180. I'm going to start buying here. It keeps going, right? And Apple in the recession got all the way down to $69 a share before things kind of leveled off and it started to turn around. You didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know that was going to happen. Nobody knew. Apple could have kept dropping, right? That recession, that housing and banking crisis had nothing to do with Apple. They were just in the way. And people who had investments in the stock got scared. They thought a recession is coming. Better hold on to cash so I can get by, pay bills, eat, have food. They sold their stock. And my caution to people nowadays is when the thing happened in March, I'm sitting there going, this is just the beginning. It's going to get way worse. So I bought zero. Big mistake. But I didn't know that. What if I had started buying and stuff just kept going down for months and months and months and months and months? I would have spent all of my money up here at the top, like using Apple as an example, when it was 225. Let's say it dropped to 180 and that's when I started buying in. And then it drops to 150 and I buy a little more. And then it drops to 125. Now I've got huge losses in some of these positions. But if I'm a long-term investor in quality companies, the thought is, who cares, right? Because if you look at what happened to Apple, it went all the way from 225 to 69 and then right up to $700 over the next couple of years. So even if you had purchased it at 185 or 150 or 120 or 69 or even 225 right before the recession hit, and you just held all that time until the recession was over and bought more sporadically as things went down, and then rode the recovery up to $700 a share, you'd have been fairly wealthy. And if you had held it, they did a split. They did a 7-for-1 split, dropping the price back down to 100. So you would have ended up benefiting from that split. And then Apple went all the way back up to 400 many years later, up until I think a couple months ago when they did their next split, which was 4-for-1, dropping it back down to 100. So on the one hand, these are tremendous buying opportunities, and you would be remiss to not start scaling in a little. On the other hand, you don't know where the bottom is going to be. In March, I thought we were just getting started, and it was over and right back up before you knew it. I missed that opportunity. In 2008, things just kept dropping. So we never know. The point to all of this, you're sitting there going, so what's the fucking point? The point is, we don't know. Nobody knows. And when you look at what happened on Wednesday in DC, and how this is maybe potentially just a harbinger of things to come, and that things could get way, way worse before they even start to get remotely better. Come on, we still have COVID that we're dealing with, and now we have the threat of domestic terror in our own country. It could be bad. It could be bad for a couple months. It could be bad for a couple weeks. It could be bad for a couple years. And we don't know. So what's your investing strategy? Now, if you've been following me on TikTok and you've been watching these cash out episodes, up until last week, I said a recession could happen at any moment, for any time, for any reason. And people like to ask, they go, when's the next one going to be? And I go, it could be tomorrow. It could be a couple of years from now. I don't know. Well, what's going to cause it? It could be anything. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. But you need to be ready You need to have a wish list of stocks that you want to buy, and you need to have some money set aside. You also need to have 6 months of emergency funds. We're seeing it now in this country. People don't have that because we always consistently prove one thing, which is that we excel at living beyond our means, whether it means having too many kids or too big of a house that we can't afford, or too many cars, or too expensive of a car with too expensive of a lease payment, insurance and gas. We just live to excess. That's what we do really well here. We have houses full of stuff, and when our house gets full, we just rent a storage room and we pay extra money to house our extra stuff that we're just not using at the moment. And when something like COVID hits, bam, we're in big trouble. We're lining up at food banks, begging, please give me some canned goods. We're getting evicted. We're losing our homes. We're wondering, can I buy medicine this month or groceries this month? That's where we are as a country, and this happens every time. This happened in 2008, it happened in the last recession, it happened in the last one, it happened in the last one, and it'll keep happening. So if just one person out there is hearing this and goes, you know what, I better cut back on my spending and start saving a rainy day fund for when this happens, and start making some investments, because look, stock market is all-time highs right now. If you're running the risk of being foreclosed on, or if you are running the risk of being evicted from your rental, or if you just can't pay groceries and buy groceries this month, but you've been making investments for the last 10 years, steadily averaging in on positions or scaling in on positions, you're doing fairly well right now in the stock market. Maybe at home you're hurting, maybe you're laid off, maybe you're scrambling to get by, but hey, if you've got some investments, dump some shares, pay your rent, dump some shares, pay off some debt. Ideally, these investments are for the long term, but they're also there as a fail-safe. Look, right now, people are hurting, but markets are at all-time highs. This would be an opportunity for you to start selling off investments to prevent going into deeper debt or getting evicted. Point to all of this is you need to have money at the ready, because we never know when a thing like this will happen. Is this going to be the end of the world? Is this recession? Is this domestic terror? Is this a virus? Is it going to bring down the economy for a couple weeks? Or is it going to bring down the economy for a couple of months? Is it going to have a big effect on the stock market? You know, these algorithms and these computer-based trading things, if the people who are funding them pull out, bam, there goes the market. How long does it last? Nobody knows. How long should you be scaling in before you start to get worried, right? Where's the bottom going to be? Do you want to buy in right away, or do you want to wait and step back? That's what I did in March, and I regret it. But in 2008, when I sat back, I just watched as it kept going lower and lower and lower for a long, long time. So what's the right move? One right move might be scale in sporadically as things have big down days. I'm not talking about the small down days, but on big sell-off days, if we see that moving forward due to domestic terror and civil unrest, those might be buying opportunities. If you're afraid that this could be something really cataclysmically bad, maybe you don't want to do anything. Maybe you don't want to invest anything because you don't like the idea of tying up money in stocks when the markets could be incredibly volatile. This is also why it's important to have a plan as an investor, and many plans. If you have watched my TikTok videos, what I said leading into 2021 is, I think under Joe Biden, we're going to have slightly less, still volatile, but slightly less volatile markets, and more of a slow burn uptrend, a bull market, because of his infrastructure, his climate, his cannabis reform. All of those things will create huge jobs. Fixing up our roads, installing solar on roof decks and stuff like that could be humongous for our boons for our economy. And I said I was going to be doing less day trading and more swing trading, more buying and holding for the long term as a trader. So that means anywhere from a couple days to a month or two. That was my plan. And when everything happened on Wednesday, I'm going to snap now. So if you're listening to the podcast, that sound you're going to hear is a snap. My plan changed, just like that. Now it's back to day trading because I don't trust these markets. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. It has nothing to do with his tax plan. It has everything to do with civil unrest that I think could be coming. Is that doom and gloom? Am I over-exaggerating what could happen? I hope so. I hope nothing bad comes from this. But at the end of the day, I think things get way worse before they get better. And I think that could have an effect on the market. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it has no effect on the market whatsoever. Maybe the Maybe the rich have enough money in their coffers that they don't need to pull out anything from this algorithm and the trading that they're doing, and they can just keep driving the markets up in perpetuity with occasional corrections to lock in some gains. Or maybe this causes some widespread panic. It didn't on Wednesday, it didn't on Thursday. If there is civil unrest, if there is domestic terror at the hands of these guys, these unhinged domestic terrorists, is it gonna be a one-day sell-off on the market, couple days sell-off on the market like we had in March, 1 month sell-off and then everything's back to normal? Or is it gonna be some really dark times? You gotta still factor in COVID. And if this thing doesn't get under control, that could have an impact on the economy too. So we've got this kind of perfect storm brewing where COVID is over here and then domestic terror is over here. And what happens if they meet and we have days of domestic terror and having to shut down our economy because of COVID? Could be bad. So my advice to you is to be very careful. If you have profits, consider taking them. I'm not an advisor. I'm not a financial advisor or broker, so I can't tell you what to do. Personally, if I have significant gains in companies and I have this foreboding feeling that bad things might happen, I might sell. There's no shame in taking a profit. Even if you think it might run, even if you think it might have room to grow, if you're looking at this news and it's making you nervous and you think, I'd like to have this cash, I've got a $3,000 profit in Tesla or whatever, this virus is making me nervous, my job is unstable, selling here and locking in some gains could cover my rent for a couple of months. That might be a decision you have to make at a certain point. Lock in those gains. You can always buy back if it drops, and believe it or not, you can always buy back if it goes up. I hear that a lot from people going, oh, I bought NEO at 5 and then it went to 6 and I sold. Sad face. Okay, you could buy it back, right? There's nothing that says it's a one and done for you, man. You can only buy it and sell it once. Oh, you loser, you blew it. You sold too early. You could buy back. Oh, but I want to buy on the dip and it keeps going higher and I don't know when to enter. Look, if your long-term strategy or belief is that the stock is going to go up over time and you bought at 5 and sold at 6 and it hits 10 and you're worried, you can start scaling in at 10. And if it drops down to 9 or 8, you can buy a little bit more. If it surges back up, if this is a long-term hold for you, I'm not talking about NEO specifically, but just anything. If your plan is to buy and hold forever and you really believe in this company, it has strong fundamentals, you can buy as it pulls back. Buy on the dip. If it pushes higher, great. That way you got in a little bit. If it sells off, maybe you cut your loss and you move on and find something different. I would personally be selling some of my big winners, locking in gains, expecting markets to pull back if we have more civil unrest that could drive down the markets. I would be in a position of locking my gains on some of these stocks. Yes, you will pay taxes on it. If you don't want to do that, if you don't like the idea of paying taxes, then you could hold it. You could do what happened. Let's use Apple as an example. It's 2008, Apple's $225. You are in at, say, $190 a share. So you're up, you're profiting. It's $225, you've got profit. And it starts dropping. Your one thought is, man, if I sell here, I'm going to pay a lot in taxes. On the other hand, my plan is to hold Apple for a very long time. Now, you don't know that Apple's going to do anything in particular at the time. You don't know it's going to go to 69 and then go up to 700. It could very easily hit 69 and drop lower and never recover. There are plenty of examples like that. Sirius Satellite Radio is one of them. Sirius Satellite Radio used to trade at around $30 a share. Recession hits, Sirius Satellite Radio dropped all the way to 5 cents a share. If you had been in at, say, 18, rode it up to 30 and didn't sell because you thought, I'm holding this long term, it drops all the way to 5 cents. You go, wow, I'm going to load up here. You could buy a little bit. They might go bankrupt. We don't know in the moment what's happening. You could load up at 5 cents a share and then they go belly up and you lose everything. Or they could recover and go right back up and hit $70 or $80 a share, but they didn't. In fact, the recession was in 2008, and even today, all the way in 2021, Sirius Satellite Radio, I don't know what the price is. I think it's under $5 or $6 a share right now. It's definitely under 10, but it never came back. It never recovered. So if you bought it in at 18 and it hit 30 and then it dropped all the way to 5 cents, you're still at a loss. You're still not back. So we just don't know. That's the caution that I have for you is this episode of Cash Out probably isn't going to help anybody. It's just going to leave you a little bit more confused because there's no right answer. There's no guarantee for any of this. Nobody knows Apple is going to go from 225 to 69 to 700. Nobody knew that was going to happen. Nobody knew that it was going to go from 225 to 69. Maybe some people thought, this is just going to be a quick sell-off and up. I'm going to start buying in at the $150 range. Blew all their money, got all the way to 69, and they were like, well, shit, I don't have any money left to buy here. Maybe someone else was thinking, man, it went from 225 to 69. I'm not buying yet. I think it goes lower. I'll start buying when it's in the 20s. And it never got there. You know, there are just so many examples like this where it is hard to say. That's the gist of this episode. It's hard to say. There's no way to predict this sort of thing. You've got options. My option is, or my recommendation, what I'll be doing personally is, I said I was going to be swing trading in 2021. I'm probably going to be day trading because I don't trust these fringe domestic terrorist groups, and I'm a little nervous, and we'll see what happens. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And so I'm going to be very in and out on my trades, locking in my profits when I got them, not going to be holding too long unless things level off and things start to work economy-wise, then I will be swing trading. So this is the part of the show where I go into the TikTok questions. I don't have any this week, but there are some earnings up, and I just will do a very quick once-over on these earnings. On Tuesday, after markets close, KB Homes reports earnings. They're one of our big home builders. I'm just curious because of COVID. I don't think we're going to see the effects of, say, any foreclosures or evictions, but maybe they're building fewer homes. Maybe they're building more homes as people can work from anywhere. So what wealthy investors are doing is they're buying up weekend getaway homes for Airbnb. So maybe KB will be hurting. Maybe they'll be benefiting. I don't know. Afria is cannabis. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Afria. Their earnings come out on Thursday morning, and so do Delta, the airline. I would be curious about both of these earnings. Afria is one of the largest cannabis companies right now. If you read any article, they're the one that always gets recommended. I think cannabis will do very, very well in the next 4 years, especially if people are having some mega anxiety from domestic terror. Maybe everyone's going to be getting high, man. Cool them off a little bit. Delta, airlines, COVID, I'm curious about that as well. Are people flying less? Yes. Will Delta have a little bit of a surge from the holiday travel? Maybe. I'd be curious to see about that. And then on Friday morning, we have JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citibank, and PNC. So banks on Friday, and that's interesting as well because of people who are maybe potentially being foreclosed upon or are going into debt, taking loans, second mortgages on their home or whatever. I would also be curious about that. So that wraps it up. If you follow me on TikTok, thanks. That's where I am most of the time. If you are listening on podcast form, thank you. It's new, so this is exciting. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Have a good day and enjoy your week. Stay safe wherever you are.